All right, it's time to talk basketball. I'm Jose Salviati, editor at thepeachbasket.net. He's Steve Purciello, longtime educator, vice principal, high school basketball coach, and athletic director. And this is the Shot Clock Pod, the best 15 minutes of random NBA thoughts online anywhere. If this is your first time listening, welcome. We're glad you found us. This podcast was born out of content at Steve's 13 Rules, random NBA thoughts articles, which he publishes weekly. Steve and I have exactly 15 minutes to discuss his mind around the NBA. Today, we'll discuss his latest 13 Rules Random NBA Talks article, where he shares his thoughts on select teams and select situations around the NBA after week number 14. Steve, are you ready?
I'm ready.
Let's go. Let's start the timer. And we're off. First topic. The Milwaukee Bucks. The Bucks started off 4-9. They didn't look good. Matter of fact, they look pretty bad at times. But now they stand at 25-17, fourth in the East, and you called them a dark horse in the Eastern Conference. What changed for the Bucks?
Well, I think Giannis is playing like a man possessed. He's having a tremendous year. I know the press isn't putting him near Jokic or Shea for MVP, but he's having that kind of year. You know, he's put him on their back. Also, him and Damien's fitting in now as a complementary player, which has been a difficult transition. And the interesting thing that the Bucks are doing, they're running last year. A lot of people picked on them or complained that Giannis and Damien weren't playing any pick and roll. This year, they've done that. And they put the defense in a bad spot between the two of them. Giannis can get to the basket, and Dame can just shoot. So it's really changing things. Damien is a couple points under his lifetime, but not that badly. He's about 25 points a game. I think he's about 27 in his career. But he's playing the role. Now, what's interesting is, and the Bucks are close. They've only got like 17 losses. And so they're right near third place and second place with Boston. But the interesting thing is they're talking Middleton, Bobby Portis, they're on the market. And that's very interesting because are they looking to pick up that star? And have they had enough of Middleton being out so often? I don't know if they'll find takers, but I think they're looking for that one more big time. And then they think they might be put over the top.
Interesting. Couple thoughts from me. I'm on the West Coast. He's on the East Coast. I don't get to watch a lot of Milwaukee Bucks basketball. But first thought, 11 years of watching Dame here in Portland. I can't imagine how hard it's got to be just mentally to kind of switch, right? And not be the guy and be okay with not being the guy and admitting, right, inside your own brain that Giannis is the best player. It took Dame a couple years to get there, which makes sense. So that's thought number one. Thought number two, man, I thought we were done with this 3-star thing, this super team thing. You need a good team. You don't need 3 of the best players. I mean, is Milwaukee going to make a mistake here?
I think they're looking. I think it's a good point. I don't know if they are. I think they're close, and not necessarily a Jimmy Butler, but there's interest in they've talked about Bradley Beal going there. So there's interest in, I guess, upgrading themselves. It's the only thing I can think of. Middleton, I believe his contract's up. So, some team, and the other piece, Milwaukee doesn't have much in draft picks, but I guess they're looking to just a little bit better. By the way, they got Connaughton, and his salary pushes them into the second apron. They want to just unload that and get a draft pick or something for him, a second-round pick, just to get rid of the money so that then they go down into the first apron, and then trading is a lot easier when you're first apron. So there's a process they want to do that we have to watch in the next 2 weeks. But let me say this. Right now, they're sitting fourth. That means if everything worked and they won the first round, they would see Cleveland in the second round.
Yeah.
I don't know. If you think about the 4 teams that are top 4 teams, Boston and Cleveland and the Knicks, as well as Milwaukee, I don't know if Milwaukee's a team you want to mess with. I hate to say it, but I they're dangerous, and they're real dangerous. Giannis, he gets rolling. He's tough around, and he's developed this year a little 15-foot shot that's not bad from the foul line extended area, about a couple feet off the foul line. So it just made them better. And I don't know. I don't know if you wanna play with that. Damien, at any moment he can go off.
Sure.
That's not an easy situation for a team like Cleveland. If they played him, it'd be interesting because Cleveland would be tested. Because this team has won a championship before.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's why I think, the Bucks are probably best to stay put. They've won a championship before too. But you're right. I mean, I'm Googling here, and yeah, the rumors of Jimmy Butler, like you mentioned, Levine, Bradley Beal. Let's see what happens. I love this
Let
time
me
of year.
let me say
Go ahead.
something about Zach Levine. What he did in this year, he has restored his image.
Yeah.
Last year, nobody wanted him. Too high priced, and he's hurt, and he's malcontent, and so on. This year, great shooter. He's had a great year. If Chicago wasn't so bad, he'd be worthy of an all-star.
Mm,
And he has changed everything, the whole conversation around him. And now I think his value has gone up quite a bit in
yeah.
this year.
Yeah. No, I've seen that as well. And let's free Zach Levine. It's time to get him out of Chicago, I think. But he's not on our list to talk about,
No,
man. We got
I
other
know, I
stuff,
know.
and the clock is ticking. Let's go to
Uh-oh.
topic number two. You called out a star in Memphis that some people may not have heard of. Now, again, being a West Coast guy, I know this guy. I'm familiar with this guy, but you called him a star. The Grizzlies are currently third in the Western Conference. While this player, we haven't yet named, is averaging 20 points per game, while their star, right, John Morant, he's only played 26 of 44. Who's the player, and what do you think makes him a star?
I watch Memphis games now and then, and lately I've watched more because I enjoy watching Jaren Jackson play. Jaren Jackson does whatever is needed during a game, and he's not afraid. He's a clutch player. He takes a big shot. People forget he was the defensive player of the year. So he's a complete player. He does it all on the court, and he's a winner. He can hit shots down the stretch, and he can just carry a team. And the way he handles his teammates and everything, it looks like he is just a perfect team player, and he's willing to do what's needed to get the team over the top. Naturally, Desmond Bain's a pretty good player also, and Morant is real good. But this guy, last year, in a miserable year, he was the guy that played. And he just, for anybody who's not aware of him, just take a look. He can play. He does all little things in a game, and it'll come up big when it counts.
Yeah. Undeniable good player. And you're right. Outside of Memphis, a lot of people may not be familiar with his game. 22.7 points per game, started all 43 for Memphis, averaging about 30 minutes a game. He's the real deal. I love the shout out for JJJ. And this was interesting. And you and I talked about this before, but in your article, and we'll make sure to link it wherever you are reading or hearing this, so you could read more of Steve's thoughts. But you present a pretty compelling argument as to why the Olympics and playing in the Olympics and participating in the Olympics might be a problem for NBA players. I mean, do you think it is? Do you think it's going to impact? Like, we haven't seen players, sign up for the All-Star Game dunk contest in years, notable players, because they think it impacts their game. Same thing in MLB, in the home run contest, right? It might impact my swing and my timing. Is the Olympics maybe going to be not an option for stars moving forward?
Well, let me go backwards before we go forward on this.
Okay.
When I think about this, when I think back to people of my era who played, they were playing 4 games in 5 nights and maybe more. They
Okay.
were, but here's the thing that I think about. Today's player played the AAU. They all know each other when they're growing up because they play against each other. And when the AAU, they play a couple games in a day. And my thoughts being, injuries are happening as guys get older, and I'm wondering about the wear on these players. In my era, they didn't play as much. Now we get into this Olympics, and there's been a lot of talk about what the hell's wrong with the Celtics. Well, and you start thinking about this. You got Holiday, who's not having nearly as good a year as last year. He shot over 40% from three, he's way down. Derek White is a good player. He's not the player he was last year, not close to it, and he's not
Mm.
shooting real well. And Jason Tatum is good. He's good. He goes off at any time. He can get you 35, 40 at any night and triple double and so on. Although he hasn't done it a lot, but he's always around it. Their numbers aren't what they were, shooting wise and all the other things. So it leads you to think. Now the next thing I'll say, if you watch Bam Adebayo, he is not having a good year at all. Offensively, he's really, and he's being beat a few times to the basket, and he's a good defender. So now you start looking at this and you start thinking, well, what do these people all have in, oh, they played in the Olympics.
Yeah.
Basketball players today, and I know they work out after the season's over, but they don't have, their bodies are not the same as years ago because they played a bunch of games before they even got to the pros. And that's why they break down a lot easier, easily, more easily. So that was my thinking, and then I started checking numbers, and I gave you a couple guys there that their numbers aren't nearly. I didn't check on LeBron and Curry because when you look at LeBron and Curry, they take a lot. They get days off, and back to back, they'll sit a lot, and they'll sit different times, and they get more nicks, and they get hurt for a couple games at a time. And so I didn't factor the old guys in. But I did factor these guys. The other name I saw was Devin Booker. He's not nearly having as good a year as he's had before. So
Right.
I began to think. Now, I saw the opposite with Anthony Edwards. Anthony Edwards is shooting real well in the three. He's having as good a year. So, that might be the one that you look and say, okay, but the numbers come back and more guys are struggling after an Olympics. Don't forget, for Boston, those guys only had a month and a half off. And,
Right.
they might have sat for a week or two, but after the Olympics, they might have sat around, but they had to get back to work and do it. And there's a little bit of talk about Drew Holiday not being in great shape this year. That's a little
Mm.
bit of talk coming out of Boston. Well, is that true? I don't know. But the point being, you wonder if he rested. He's not young. So you wonder the effect of all this on these people.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting, and I hope it doesn't come to that. I remember there was a time when it was just college players, right? You couldn't be a pro. Now maybe there's a shift coming. Who knows?
Well,
We'll see. I do. There's some value to what you're saying, and you present it really well in the article.
the injuries are just you're seeing load management is an everyday thing. And I know a
Yeah.
lot of people say, well, come on, that's ridiculous and so on. You start to wonder of how the toll of all these years of playing a lot of games is really wearing them down. And that's my whole point of the
Yeah.
article I wrote.
Yep. Well, we're going to have to see how it plays out. The Olympics are pretty special, and I don't. If they're pros, they're pros. If they're college players or college players, I'm still going to watch. Well, let's go to the final topic. You mentioned the Boston Celtics. They're in a slump. It's undeniable. They just recently lost to the Los Angeles Lakers. I'll say it again just in case it didn't come through. The Boston Celtics lost to the Los Angeles Lakers. Bronny James got 4 minutes of playing time. That goes to show you how dominant that win was. But we're not here to talk about that win. I just wanted to emphasize it. We're
Can we
here to
talk
talk
about
about.
can we talk about the standings? Who's got more wins?
I didn't want to talk
Oh,
about
okay.
that
Okay.
news.
I
I
didn't
don't
know.
know.
I
We,
didn't
we
know.
got we
Oh,
got something else to talk about.
oh,
But thank
okay.
you for bringing it up. The Miami Heat and the Lakers were in the NBA Finals just a few years back. But man, today they're both staggering, right? The Miami Heat are dealing with a disgruntled star. The Lakers seem to be stuck in limbo. They know what they need. They need a big. They get it. They want to, get rid of pieces that they really like. They're stuck, right? So, simple question, really: do you see a clear path out for these two teams, and who's going to get out of this funk they're in first?
Well, first of all, I don't I don't see as long as LeBron's there, they're going to be an average team.
That's crazy. Just saying that sentence just doesn't seem right.
well, he's 40 years old.
You're right. Yeah.
And there's no, I don't know how you get out of it. Mm, so I don't quite realize, I don't quite understand that. And I think Miami, they've got a lot of work to do. They've got some young players. Khalil Weir is playing real well.
Good players, yeah.
But I don't know how good he is. You need stars. You know, what's his name? Jovic is a nice player. Yeah, Jack, he's good, but they're not stars. So, Miami's got to figure out how to get a big name. The Lakers, their their problem is they have nobody to trade. The last thing they had was D'Angelo Russell. Now, I'm not saying people wanted him. However, what's important here is with D'Angelo Russell, he had an expiring contract. So a bad team would take him, let him finish the year out. Who cares? I don't see either team without a star doing well. It's a problem. And I don't see, at some point, the Lakers are going to sit there and say, we've got to make a trade. We got to get rid of Davis. We have to get rid of James. We have to get rid of somebody.
Right.
And vice versa with the others. They, with the Heat, well, they got Butler. They have to get rid of him. And that's another issue. And I don't know if they're not going to get a star back for him. So you're going to be restricted in how good you are.
Yeah. You wrote a lot about Jimmy Butler. We've talked a lot about it. You've heard the buzzer go off, so I don't want to dive into it too deep. But, and I don't even want to talk about Jimmy Butler. I just think it's a sad state for the NBA. And you called that out in your article. But I do think you're right about the Lakers. They're going to have to, at some point, decide to trade somebody, whether that's Austin Reeves, Anthony Davis, or LeBron James. And I think the general manager, who you talked about before on this show and in your articles, he kind of is more concerned with covering his back end than maybe improving the team. He doesn't want to be the guy who trades LeBron James. I just don't think that's going to happen. And you could say the same thing for AD. And I tell you, they don't want to trade Austin Reeves either. So again, they're in limbo, man. They're stuck. And I think they're just going to be a play-in and probably out quick for this season and the foreseeable future.
If you're in the Western Conference, you have to do some serious thinking, because this isn't like Boston winning it last year and who knows if they're going to do it again or not. The Oklahoma City is going to be there for a while.
Right.
You got to look at your team and say, can we challenge them in the next couple of years? And if the answer is no, then you've got to get a little bit smart and figure out what you want to do. Oklahoma City's young and good. And they're not always healthy. I mean, their bigs have been hurt all year, Holmgren and Hartenstein.
Yep.
So, you got to shit. The Eastern Conference is more wide open in the way that, you don't have a dominant team like Oklahoma. I mean, if Oklahoma doesn't win it this year, going into next year, they'd have to be a favorite, even if they don't win it. And,
Sure.
and that's going to be like that for a couple of years, unless something crazy happens. So you got to start thinking, how do we get better than that team?
I agree with every aspect of what you just said, but I do got to call out that the Cleveland Cavalier fans are a little upset with you saying there's no dominant team in the East. How much more dominant do you need to be than the Cleveland Cavaliers?
Boston was dominant for many years and they didn't win. You got to win the thing before you become that.
Mic drop.
You got to win it. You got to win it. And it goes through the whole. Oklahoma does too. The only thing is Oklahoma is so young; they're just going to get better. Holmgren, if he plays a whole season, my goodness. And Shea is just great. He's going to be probably the MVP. So it's different. Mitchell is still young, but and so on. The other night, Garland missed foul shots down the stretch to cost him a game. Okay, Cleveland's the best team in the East right now, but let's see it and when it counts.
All right. Outstanding. There you go. Well, that's it. You heard our buzzer go off. Generally, we start to wind down when the buzzer went off. We kind of got energized when the buzzer went off this time. But our time is up. Thank you for listening. Make sure to read Steve's entire 13 Rules Random NBA Thoughts article. We'll make sure to link that wherever you're hearing or reading this to get more NBA random thoughts after week 14 of the 2024-25 NBA season. please consider subscribing, liking, commenting. Any of that stuff helps us so much, and we're grateful for it. Join us next week on the Shot Clock Pod, the best 15 minutes of NBA random thoughts online anywhere. Steve, we'll talk next week.
Thanks a
Thanks.
lot. Thanks.